Hello and welcome to this video on the final section of Act 3, Scene 4. Well done for making it so far in this scene. I realised that the previous video was rather long, but there's just so much to talk about in this really pivotal scene in the play. In the last video then, where we looked at the bulk of Act 3, Scene 4, we talked about two motifs, one of which we're going to pick up on today, which is the motif of blood. And this comes up right at the start of this section of the scene. Now, what's happened already is that Macbeth and Lady Macbeth have hosted a feast or a banquet to celebrate their coronation, to assert their authority, and it's been disrupted because Macbeth has seen Banquo's ghost, and he's had a moment of absolute madness in the middle of the banquet, and Lady Macbeth has been unable to control the fallout of that. So all of the Thanes have left, and Macbeth and Lady Macbeth are sitting in the dreary remnants of this ruined feast. And Macbeth says, "It will have blood," they say. "Blood will have blood." He's talking here about a cycle of violence, a cycle of bloodletting, which cannot be stopped. And look how definite Macbeth is, that there's no end to this. That modal verb will suggests that. So blood will have blood. It's not blood might have blood or blood could have blood. This cycle will definitely and inevitably continue. And then Macbeth talks about how he's worried that he might be found out, that he might be discovered to be a murderer. And he says, "Stones have been known to move and trees to speak. Augurs and understood relations have by magpies and choughs and rooks brought forth the secretest man of blood." Now, this might seem quite strange to us, but in the medieval period, there were certain beliefs about how you could find out who the murderer was. One of them was that if the murderer approached the body that he had killed, the wounds would start to bleed again. There'd be blood everywhere, and you'd be able to work out that the person who was then standing next to the body was the one who killed it. Obviously, not very scientifically accurate. And neither are these things about how stones could move and trees could speak and so on. But it shows Macbeth's paranoia. He thinks he's going to be discovered pretty soon. And then he changes the subject and says, "What is the night?" By this he means, what time is it? Now, here I really get the sense that Lady Macbeth has given up a little bit. This is the last time that we see her and her husband on stage together. This is the last time we see them having any kind of discussion about what Macbeth's plans are. And she just seems a bit fed up with the whole thing. She has tried to save Macbeth at the party, at the feast. She's tried to control the fallout of him breaking out in madness in front of everybody. And she has failed at that. And so she's very quiet at this part of the scene. She says, almost at odds with morning, which is which. So she means it's dawn, night is turning into morning. And Macbeth says, "How sayest thou that Macduff denies his person at our great bidding?" So Macbeth changes the subject again, and he says, "Macduff didn't come to the feast. What's going on here?" And Lady Macbeth seems really worn out, and she says, "Did you send to him, sir?" Look at the use of the word "sir," so cold, so formal, so distant, so different from their earlier passionate, intimate relationship in Act 1. And Macbeth says, "I hear it, by the way, but I will send." So Macbeth heard that Macduff wasn't coming to the feast. Now he's going to write to him and find out what's going on. And then Macbeth makes an incredible admission, and he says, "There's not one of them, but in his house I keep a servant feed." Now, feed doesn't mean feed as in eating, it means fee as in paid. So he's paying servants in the houses of his thanes to be spies. So he probably knows that something's going wrong with Macduff, that Macduff isn't loyal to him because there's a servant who's betraying Macduff. And Macbeth then says what his plans are. "I will tomorrow, and betimes I will to the weird sisters." He's going to go back to the witches. "More shall they speak, for now I am bent to know, by the worst means the worst. For mine own good all causes shall give way." So whatever they say, as bad as it can possibly be, he wants to know what the witches have to say to him. And then he says maybe one of the most famous quotations in the play, "I am in blood stepped in so far that, should I wade no more, returning were as tedious as to go over." So here he's talking about how he's almost in a river of blood, and that he's walked so far into the blood that there's no point in going back. "Strange things I have in head that will to hand, which must be acted ere they may be scanned." And Lady Macbeth says, "You lack the season of all nature's sleep," as in, you need to go to sleep. And Macbeth says, "Come, will to sleep. My strange and self-abuse is the initiate fear that wants hard use. We are yet but young indeed." By this, Macbeth means that they have only just begun. They are young, they need to mature. And if you think about how many murders and deaths and how much blood has already been spilled, and Macbeth is saying that this is just the start, so he really has become a murderous tyrant at this point in the play. Okay, let's look at this key quotation then, and I want you just to pause the video and think, what do you notice about it? Are there any words that jump out at you? Any images that you think are interesting here? And think about that for a minute or so, and then start the video again when you're ready. First thing I notice is that pronoun I. It's not we, but it's I. So yes, he's talking to his wife about this, but he has isolated himself from her. He doesn't see her as being part of his plans anymore. So we have a complete change in their relationship. The image of blood represents the guilt, the remorse, the horror, the despair, the distress, the scorpions in her brain. Everything is just being dominated by this image of violence that's so deep that it's like a river that Macbeth has stepped into. And then this final line, returning where is tedious as go over, or returning where is tedious as going over. So he's halfway through crossing this river and he's kind of thinking, well, if I go back, it's going to be quite far. I might as well keep going to the other side of the river. So here we have Macbeth being really committed to continuing in this tyrannical, violent reign that he has started. Okay, so that's the end of Act 3, Scene 4. In the next couple of videos, we'll tidy up the end of Act 3 and then we'll be into Act 4.